Most people pick a retirement number and hope for the best. That number is usually wrong. The right number does not just depend on your lifestyle. It depends on where in the world you live. Retire in Japan and you might need half the portfolio required in the United States. Choose the wrong country and that difference costs you a decade of extra work. We built a simulation for 5 countries: USA, UK, Canada, Australia, and Japan. We applied real cost of living data and adjusted withdrawal rates by retirement age. Results start at about $600,000. At the other end, some countries require over $2 million. That gap is not a rounding error. It is your life. Before we run the numbers, here is how the calculation works. The 4% rule is the foundation of modern retirement planning. It states that you can withdraw 4% of your portfolio each year without running out of money. That assumption holds across a 30-year retirement with high probability. But retiring at 40 means your money must last 50 years. 50 years requires a more conservative withdrawal rate. Here is what we used in this simulation. For age 40, here is the rate we applied: 3.3%. For age 50, 3.7%. For age 60, the standard 4%. The math is simple. Take your annual expenses, divide by the withdrawal rate. That is your number. We included housing, food, healthcare, transportation, and leisure spending. All data comes from national statistics agencies and independent cost of living research. All figures are shown in local currency first, with US dollar equivalents for comparison. Here is something to watch for as we go. The country with the lowest required portfolio will surprise most people watching this. Start with the most expensive country on our list. A comfortable single-person lifestyle in the United States costs roughly $60,000 per year. That covers a modest apartment, groceries, transport, utilities, and basic recreation. But retiring in the US before age 65 creates one serious problem: healthcare. Medicare does not begin until 65. Before that, you pay for private health insurance. The average premium for a single adult runs about $700 per month. That adds roughly $8,400 to your annual budget. For an early retiree in the US, total annual costs land near $68,000. Now apply the withdrawal rates. To retire at 40 in the United States, you need about $2 million. To retire at 50, the target drops to about $1.8 million. To retire at 60, it falls to $1.5 million. The difference between those two retirement ages is $500,000. That gap is almost entirely driven by healthcare premiums paid before Medicare begins. Once Medicare starts at 65, annual costs drop by nearly $9,000. That is why 60 is a powerful retirement age in the United States. 5 years of private premiums, then government coverage for life. Now move to the United Kingdom. A comfortable single lifestyle in the UK costs about £30,000 per year. That covers rent, food, transport, and modest leisure spending. Healthcare is not a variable here. The National Health Service covers residents regardless of employment status. You pay no private premiums in retirement. That single fact changes the early retirement calculation. To retire at 40 in the UK, you need around £900,000. In US dollar terms at current rates, that is roughly $1.1 million. To retire at 50, the target drops to about £800,000. To retire at 60, it falls to £750,000. There is also the state pension to consider. The full UK state pension requires 35 years of national insurance contributions. The full payment runs about £11,600 per year. Someone retiring at 40 will not have 35 qualifying years. They may receive a reduced pension starting at 67. Even a partial pension meaningfully reduces portfolio withdrawal pressure later in life. Compared to the United States, a UK retiree at 40 needs about 45% less capital. The NHS advantage rarely appears in personal finance discussions. It should appear in every one of them. Canada sits close to the US in cost of living but offers universal healthcare. A comfortable single lifestyle in Canada costs about 55,000 Canadian dollars per year. At current rates, that is roughly 40,000 US dollars. Like the UK, Canada's universal healthcare removes private insurance from the calculation. To retire at 40 in Canada, the target is about 1.7 million Canadian dollars. That converts to roughly $1,200,000. To retire at 50, the number drops to about 1.5 million Canadian. To retire at 60, it falls to about 1.4 million Canadian. Canada has a government pension called the Canada Pension Plan. You can begin collecting at age 60 with reduced benefits. Full benefits begin at 65. Someone who retires at 40 with 15 years of contributions will receive a partial CPP payment. That payment can reach about $700 Canadian per month by 65. It acts as a floor that reduces portfolio withdrawal pressure in later years. Canada also has old age security, which begins automatically at 65. Together, CPP and OAS can deliver over $1,500 Canadian per month from the government. That income floor makes a 40-year early retirement significantly more achievable in Canada. Australia has a retirement savings mechanism unlike any other country on this list. It is called superannuation. Your employer is legally required to contribute 11% of your salary into a locked account. That account grows tax advantage throughout your career. You cannot access it until age 60 in most cases. The Association of Superannuation Funds of Australia defines a comfortable single lifestyle at about 50,000 Australian dollars per year. In US dollar terms, that is roughly 33,000. To retire at 40 in Australia, the target is about 1.5 million Australian dollars. Your superannuation balance sits separately and becomes accessible at 60. To retire at 50, the personal savings target drops to about 1.4 million Australian. To retire at 60, superannuation withdrawals become available. That substantially closes the gap. Australia's superannuation creates a two-phase early retirement. Phase 1 runs from 40 to 60. It relies entirely on personal investment accounts. Phase 2 begins at 60. Superannuation becomes a second income stream. For someone who worked a full career and retires at 60, superannuation may cover most annual expenses. For someone who retires at 40 with 15 years of contributions, the balance is smaller. Australia's Medicare system removes private insurance from the budget entirely. Combined with a moderate cost of living, Australia offers one of the most efficient paths to early retirement. Japan is the most affordable retirement destination on our list by a wide margin. A comfortable single lifestyle in Japan costs about 3.6 million yen per year. The exchange rate runs about 150 yen per dollar. That works out to roughly 24,000 US dollars per year. Japan's national health insurance covers all residents. Premiums for retirees are based on income and assets. A retiree with modest income pays roughly 200,000 yen per year. Total annual costs land near 3.8 million yen. To retire at 40 in Japan, the required portfolio is about 115 million yen. In US dollar terms, that is roughly 770,000. To retire at 50, the target drops to about 103 million yen. To retire at 60, it falls to about 95 million yen. Japan has a national pension called Kokumin Nenkin. Contributions are required until age 60. Payments begin at 65. The average monthly benefit is about 65,000 yen. At current rates, that is roughly $430 per month. For a foreigner who stays in Japan long-term, that pension supplements portfolio withdrawals from 65 onward. Japan's affordability comes with real trade-offs. The language barrier is significant. Navigating healthcare and government services in English takes time and effort, but from a purely financial standpoint, Japan offers the most efficient path to early retirement on this list. Here is the full picture in US dollar terms. To retire at 40, the cheapest option requires about $770,000. The most expensive requires about $2 million. The spread between them is over $1,200,000. That is not just a financial difference. For many people, that spread represents 5 to 10 extra years in the workforce. Australia sits in the middle. At age 40, it requires the equivalent of about $975,000 US dollars. Canada requires roughly $1,200,000 at that same age. To retire at 50, Japan requires about $690,000. The US requires about $1.8 million. To retire at 60, Japan requires about $630,000. The US requires $1.5 million. Notice something important. The gap between retiring at 40 versus retiring at 60 is not as large as most people assume. In the US, that gap is $500,000. In Japan, the gap is only $140,000. The earlier you retire, the more the country you choose matters. At 60, you have roughly 30 years of spending ahead. At 40, you have 50 years. Country choice becomes the dominant variable. Some early retirees use a hybrid approach. They accumulate savings in a high-earning country like the United States. Then they relocate to a lower-cost country at retirement. The currency advantage stretches a dollar-denominated portfolio significantly further. This is geographic arbitrage. Where you retire can matter as much as when you start investing. Here is the core lesson from this simulation. Most people treat retirement as a savings problem. Save enough, then stop working. But retirement is also a spending problem. The country you choose shapes every number in this calculation. Healthcare is the dominant variable in the United States. Remove private insurance and the US numbers become far more competitive. The UK and Canada offer universal healthcare with English language infrastructure. They represent the most practical path for English-speaking early retirees who want to reduce their required portfolio. Japan offers the lowest absolute number but requires genuine cultural adaptation. Australia's superannuation system makes 60 the most financially efficient retirement age for its residents. One final point on risk. The 4% rule is built on historical US market data. A global portfolio may perform differently. A sharp market correction in the first 5 years of retirement can permanently damage your long-term plan. Keep a 2-year cash buffer at retirement. This lets you avoid selling portfolio assets during a downturn. It is one of the most effective risk management strategies available to early retirees. Review your withdrawal rate every 5 years. What worked at 40 may need adjustment at 50. These numbers are simulations based on publicly available cost of living research and historical market data. Your results will vary based on lifestyle, family situation, taxes, and market conditions. This is not financial advice. Which country surprised you the most? Drop your answer in the comments. If this simulation changed how you think about retirement, subscribe to CashCinema. We run the math on money decisions most people never question. Every dollar has a story.